Hello, thanks for joining in with today's live Periscope broadcast, live YouTube broadcast. You might have missed me, you might have not seen me broadcast for a little while. I have been busy. Oh, look, there's already some people showing up. Thanks for joining in. Let's see if I can see comments. I should be able to. What if I type one here? Hey, that's me. So yes, I'm really glad to see you all, and I'm really glad to see that there have been a lot of people hitting the streets today for Impeachment Eve. So what have we got on Impeachment Eve? We've got a Trump letter, a 6-page letter that he sent out to everyone, presumably with the aim of encouraging his base to be firm in their opposition to impeachment, to have a narrative to tell themselves, to strengthen their conviction to ignore all the evidence that Trump has been acting like a dictator, like a king, rather than a president governing in the interests of all Americans. Some of the people who are protesting against Trump this evening are chanting, "Save our country, lock him up," which is great. And I've heard reports that in one instance, a Trump supporter drove past a rally and said, "Trump is the greatest president ever," to which he was met with a deafening cry of, "Lock him up. Donald Trump has to go." So yes, happy Impeachment Eve. Nice to see you, Henry. If you want to call in, I don't know how this would work with live stream, but you could try. Have you called in before on Periscope while I've been live streaming through StreamYard? No. But we could still try. I'm keen to talk to Americans who are on the ground, able to protest in the thick of it, at the coalface, as it were, of American sentiment, because it's a big battle for winning hearts and minds now, isn't it? I'm going to say happy Impeachment Eve again. Hang on one second. Happy Impeachment Eve. So hello to Champagne, hello to Henry, hello to Brian. Thanks for joining, everyone. How do I block a troll? Let's see. Can't block a troll. That's okay. I have moderators. Any of you who can moderate, if you would kindly dispose of the troll, I'd be grateful. But if you can't, that's also cool. If there's no moderators here, that's fine. We enjoy ignoring trolls because we enjoy modeling how people should be focusing their energies not on trolls, but on helping facilitate access to the vote. So there's some very concerted efforts by Republicans at the moment to suppress the vote, to have Democratic voters struck off the rolls in battleground states such as Wisconsin. I think approximately 250,000 Wisconsinites are to be struck from the rolls by order of a conservative right-wing judge. What shall we call them? Radical conservatives. So yes, a radical conservative judge has placed a court order to kick that many Wisconsinites off the rolls, knowing, I guess, in the back of his head that the more people you kick off the rolls, the worse it is for democracy overall in the US, but the better it is for the Republican Party. Such is the diminishing appeal of the Republican Party to a diminishing demographic subset of the American population that preventing people from voting is a key Republican strategy, because there are more Democrats than there are Republicans. There are more Democratic-leaning independents than there are Republicans. And yes, trying to stop them from voting is a key strategy for re-election for radical Republicans. Actually, I don't want to say radical Republicans, do I? Because it's a lot of them. If you're still in the Republican Party, then you have the ability to compartmentalize information to a degree that endangers democracy. You're welcome, Jeff. I'm very happy to be sticking up for Wisconsin. I always try and circulate the piece of information that it was 77,000 voters in battleground states that helped Trump scratch out an electoral college victory, even though he lost the popular vote in the 2016 election, and that it's not broadly known, but that Paul Manafort passed internal polling data, a very valuable and expensive commodity, to a former KGB agent called Konstantin Kilimnik, who's connected to various Putin friends, Putin oligarchs, such as Oleg Deripaska and Dmitry Firtash. And so Paul Manafort, who at that time was Trump's campaign manager, passed this polling data to Kilimnik, a Russian agent, essentially for the purposes of collaborating on an election strategy, for the purpose of better helping the Russian government and the Russian intelligence agencies target the hearts and minds of American voters. Oh, awesome, Ben. So what I can do, if you're keen to call in, I can give you a link so that you can then call in. Would you prefer just to be a voice, or are you happy to share a screen with me? What can I do to share a screen with Ben right now? Happy to do voice. All right. Well, what I might do then, Ben, is continue talking about impeachment for... How much time do you have? Because if I talk about impeachment for 5 more minutes, and then I can switch to Periscope, a version of Periscope in which you can just call in. So we'll do, 5 more minutes. Okay, so someone asked, since Dems say no one is above the law, you agree, let's start deporting the illegal aliens. Well, first of all, that's a dehumanizing term for migrants and asylum seekers in the US, which is typically a prelude to mass murder of a targeted, scapegoated demographic group. So I know that there already has been the willful murder of 20 children, and we don't know how many more, just migrants in general, who are being willfully medically neglected, etc., and exposed to life-endangering conditions by guards who have been inoculated into that dehumanizing framework. So instead of calling people migrants or asylum-seeking people, they call them illegal aliens, as if their very existence is a felony. Previously, it was a misdemeanor to be in America without documentation. There are 22 million undocumented migrants in America, which might give you some clue as to the level of integration and cycles of economic dependency that have been created around exploiting migrant labor, exploiting the people who come to America seeking to economically better their lives or to evade violence in their original countries. What is the mood of this room? We are happy about impeachment. That's why we say Happy Impeachment Eve. Let's see. I have not put my banner on the screen. Let's put a banner. So there we go. Done. Happy Impeachment Eve. Hopefully that makes it more obvious. And look, I've got that website there as well, which is davcat.com. What else could we have? Mitch McConnell must recuse. Or the House must. Damn it, I misspelled must. I'm trying to be less of a stickler for correct spelling at the moment, just because of the critical times in which we live, in which we may only have a few more years before food security at a global sense is jeopardized by the effects of climate change. And so what we do now is really key. And what we do now involves trying to oust fascists, trying to oppose fascism. And one way the fascists are gaining influence with a section of the working population is by over-amplifying culture change. So pretending or over-exaggerating the threat that's posed to society from innocuous things like women gaining more rights. Women gaining more rights sounds innocuous, but there can be a psychological toll for people who feel like they're losing something, namely men who have lost an emphasis on prestige and status, etc. So for blue-collar working men who already effectively on the margins of society because the pendulum of power has swung away from working people and more towards corporate oligarch-style wealthy people, vulture capitalists, etc., Working men are already existing in a very precarious economic position. To add to that, the psychological toll of feeling like they're losing ground to feminists, that feminists are taking something from them, taking respect and prestige and assumption of innocence, etc., those feel like important things. And indeed, I would argue they are sometimes important things in many cases. So that's why, I can't see the comments. Trolls are now gloating that the Senate will never convict, as if his being impeached means nothing. Well, of course, those trolls are wrong. It is a key thing that Trump is being impeached. It's historic. He's the third president in US history, and it does capture the imagination. It's like a fait accompli. Democrats got something done. They look potent. They have more alpha stuff going on with them. So yes, this is my simultaneous broadcast to both YouTube and to Periscope. It's great that I can see your comments. Someone's saying, I think Trump will feel empowered and do something even the GOP will have to convict him eventually. Trump is doing lots of things. I would add only that public pressure could influence enough US senators who are Republican to at least force them to advocate for a fair trial. So 4 Senate Republicans could bring about a majority to the Democratic side of the Senate and enforce rules such as calling witnesses. Because at the moment, McConnell is saying that he won't call any witnesses, or he won't allow for witnesses to be called, that he's going to do as much as possible to delegitimize this important constitutional process, which is to impeach a president who's abusing his power, because it's not as easy to hold a president to account through the legal system. Impeachment is the recourse of the Constitution. Someone says, how will the United States ever apologize to the world for how we let Trump become POTUS in the first place? You don't have to feel alone in having fascism affect your country. Fascism is affecting a lot of countries. There's a lot of backlash by conservative religious people, and that political base has been able to make an alliance with the disaffected working class, who are already feeling aggrieved and aggravated because of the perceived attacks of feminism. So all of the social progress we've achieved in advancing women's rights has created an environment in which social media tech billionaires have been able to exploit that niche market, that need to gain a sense of superiority or to find a way to enact that sense of superiority. And for some men who feel like they've lost prestige, they can get a sense of power by joining with other people who also say white people are superior, who also deny climate change and the threat of climate change, who get to feel like they hold answers that other people don't have, who get to embrace that sense of superiority even if it's unearned. All right. Well, I am now going to end the YouTube broadcast and restart a new Periscope broadcast so that I can talk to my friend who is Australian about some of the very critical and corrupt things that are happening in Australia right now, which kind of parallel some of the processes at work in the US. Although we don't have an impeachment process, we have a newly re-elected Conservative government, but they're in a whole heap of trouble. So if you want to listen into that Australian section, there will be a new Periscope starting now. And yes, I will have a live Australian friend to chat about that with. Somebody said, isn't Biden a crook? And I will re-articulate that only trolls and liars and paid for deceivers would argue something like that, because Biden worked with other countries and in the open to compel Ukraine to fire a corrupt prosecutor, whereas Trump conducted an underhanded personal mission using his personal attorney to pressure and extort and bribe Ukraine to begin an investigation into his personal political rivals. So no, Joe Biden did the right thing, and the outrage machine on the right can continue to faff around with its confected outrage about something perfectly legitimate and helpful that Joe Biden did as vice president, exert pressure on Ukraine to oust a corrupt prosecutor who was failing to investigate Burisma and other areas where corruption was flourishing. So yes, I have two trolls. Oh, they're using Pepe the Frog, even though the creator of Pepe the Frog has taken out a court order, I think, enjoining people not to misuse his cartoon to promote racism and deception. So yes, I have a couple of trolls, but that's okay. I'm ending this particular broadcast, and we will continue a new broadcast that's focusing on Australia. I'm just going to look a little bit at the letter from President Trump, which complains that Nancy Trump isn't a real Christian, and has exclamation marks. You know, I had a totally innocent conversation with the president of Ukraine, which isn't true, but trolls will continue to assert falsities until they run out of breath. Yes, I think a potential Biden presidency would be fine. Biden's not particularly progressive and has some baked-in racism inherent in his worldview, but he's still very highly supported by Black voters who I think understand the American voting base quite well. So they want someone with an achievement record in office who America will feel comfortable with. So even though I think Biden may have some mild cognitive issues happening, he's certainly been through a lot in terms of losing his wife and daughter at a young age in a car crash, and having his 2-year-old son at that time, Hunter Biden, have a head injury sustained in that crash, and then losing one of his surviving son to a brain tumor later on in life, and having one remaining son who has obviously addiction issues and significant personal problems, but who still managed to get a law degree, even though, yes, his personal issues seem to kind of outweigh his successes. Yes, I'm finding it unfortunate that I can't block trolls in this medium, but that's okay. I'm about to start a new Periscope broadcast in which I will be able to block trolls using a different mechanism that is just straightforward Periscope. Here I'm using a website called StreamYard, which allows me to broadcast live simultaneously to Periscope and YouTube. So that was handy for me because I have promised to make YouTube videos on a more regular basis. The troll is the jerky one. Oh, you can see it, Boxing Euro, an administrator, aren't you? Please block the trolls. They are irritating. So Champagne is saying he's up 8 points nationally, and I presume you're talking about Biden. Biden has a high degree of popularity, which is great. It's great that even with Trump's efforts to create a fake scandal about Joe Biden, that he was outed in his endeavors to do that. And that even though Trump is trying to use that outing as still a way to promote propaganda to diminish his political rival, he's still trying to use the conversation about Ukraine to try to claim that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are worthy of investigation, that's not resonating with the American public, and people seem to be pretty clear as a whole about the need to impeach and remove Trump. So I believe it's 50% support as a poll average of removing Trump. Oh, we have another troll, dear administrators. It certainly is a fake troll because Joe Biden was very above board and was acting with the support of Angela Merkel and the World Trade Organization and a host of other European countries in insisting that the Ukrainian government needed to oust the corrupt prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, before they could benefit from being given international investment funds. All right, so thanks everybody. I'm going to come back online right now using a different medium and chat to my friend Ben. So hopefully Benny is still there. I'm sorry to have kept you whilst I spoke about American things, but I also know that a lot of Australians do follow what's happening politically with Trump. Excellent. Okay, well, I'm going to get out of here and talk to you live almost instantly. Talk to you again in a second. Bye. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. Hopefully sign on to my new Periscope broadcast that I'm about to start if you're interested, but the focus will be on Australian things for a bit. Thank you. Yeah, see you in a few minutes. Thanks for listening, everyone.